Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Penny Fisher, the interim executive editor of the Naples Daily News, and I'll be your moderator for this evening. Welcome our in-studio guests, online viewers, panelists, and of course our candidates. To kick off the forum, we'll give each candidate 2 minutes for an opening statement. During the Q&A, each person will have 1 minute to answer the question, and each candidate will have 30 seconds for a rebuttal. We'll go ahead and start with your opening statements. We'll start with Mr. Saunders first.
I didn't want to be presumptuous there. I want to thank all of you for being here this evening. It's very important for the citizens of Collier County to be informed on the candidates, and so these types of forums are very important. I know how busy all of you are, especially those that are in the room tonight, but as well as the ones that are watching this online. So thank you for your time and attention. I want to thank our distinguished panel of questioners and our moderator. I'm looking forward to discussing some very significant issues facing all of us here in Collier County. I want to answer a couple questions. One is, and I've been asked this many, many times, why is Burt Saunders running for the Collier County Commission? And the reason I've been asked that is I've served on the Collier County Commission many, many years ago, for 8 years, after serving as your county attorney. And I've served as a member of the Florida House of Representatives and a member of the Florida Senate for 10 years. And I've spent the last 6 or 8 years practicing law and representing Collier County at various levels of state government. I believe that everyone should do what they can do to help improve their communities. And I believe that my best contribution to my community at this point in time is, again, serving on the Collier County Commission. There are a lot of reasons why I believe that to be the case. One is, quite frankly, my experience that I've just talked about. We're going to have 3 new county commissioners this year, and there's a tremendous number of very serious issues like growth management, transportation, protecting our water supplies, protecting our environment, enhancing our community. Those are very significant issues, and I believe that my experience will help guide this county commission. When you pick a mechanic, when you pick a doctor, you look for someone with experience, you look for someone with a good reputation. Well, it shouldn't be any different when you're picking your political leaders. I do have that experience that will be very helpful to this county. So I'm looking forward to the questions. There's some very significant issues. Look forward to getting into some detail on those. Again, I want to thank you for being here this evening, and I hope that this evening I earn your support to be your next county commissioner for Collier County in District 3. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Annisa Karim, and I would be honored to serve as your county commissioner in District 3. I believe that as we grow in Collier County, we need to make the best decisions for all of the people that live here. And to do that, we have to make sure that we have a county commission that is not only diverse in perspective, but diverse in background. And that's what I bring to the county commission. You know that the county today has a county attorney paid with full staff to protect the county. We also have recently elected an attorney in District 2, Mr. Andy Solis. So we already have attorneys that are protecting the county's interests. We don't have a biologist, we don't have a scientist that will help to make important decisions as we move forward. So I want to talk a little bit about experience as well. I'd like the audience here and the audiences home to answer this question. What do you know about the best way to make a decision? Rely on your experience. Would you rely on a homogeneous group with similar perspectives to make a wide variety of decisions on your behalf? Or would you rely on a group composed of diverse people to ask various questions and make an informed decision on your behalf? That is really the question we have before us here in Collier County. We are at a crossroads here in Collier County. We are the 10th fastest growing county in the nation. So growth is coming, and the way that we handle that growth will depend on who we elect to the county commission. So the year 2016 is very important for county commission. This is a watershed election for Collier County. I want to thank the Naples Daily News for hosting this forum and making sure that you were able to reschedule it so that the citizens of Collier County could hear from their future commissioners. And I would ask people to go to my website, www.anisakarim.com, to find out more about me, find out why I am the best choice for county commission. Thank you very much.
Before we start the question and answer portion, I want to go over the rules with you guys. The first rule is no signs, t-shirts, or handout material supporting any candidate or any cause. Cell phones must be silenced. No pictures, videos can be taken during the forum. No speaking from the audience. No show of support for or against any participant, to include clapping, cheering, whistling, or booing. Applause is appropriate upon the conclusion of the program. I'd like to introduce our panelists at this time. We have editorial editor Alan Bartlett with the Naples Daily News. We have Brent Batten, who is a columnist for the Naples Daily News. And I'm going to go over how the program will break down. We are going to do 3 rounds. Each panelist will ask a question. The candidates will get 1 minute for their response. Following those 3 rounds, we will move on to viewer-submitted questions that are vetted by our staff. Each of you will have 30 seconds to rebut if you want to do a rebuttal, and then there'll be another 30 seconds for a counter rebuttal if you'd like to do that as well. Let's go ahead and get started.
I just wanted to piggyback and thank you all for joining tonight. As you all know, we had this scheduled earlier in the month, and out of a sense of prudence as Hurricane Matthew was approaching, we decided to reschedule, and we want to thank the candidates and the ones who are also here for our next debate for joining us tonight and agreeing to reschedule this. I want to go ahead and start out with the first question with a little bit of breaking news, and we'll go ahead and start with Burt, and then we'll go to you, Annisa. I want to point to the second DCA ruling that came out here yesterday, and I wanted to ask, should the county change its purchasing ordinance and procedures now that the appeal court has decided the clerk of court's lawsuit against the county without comment, or leave the purchasing policy as it is?
You know, the county's purchasing policy has essentially been in place for many, many years. I don't believe there's a problem with the purchasing policy as it currently exists. Obviously, the county commission should regularly take a look at all county ordinances and make sure they're up to date. My understanding, after reviewing the litigation and looking at the ordinance, I don't think there's a problem with the purchasing policy. We've had a problem with the leadership in the purchasing department. My understanding is at this point that the county manager has taken significant steps to correct that. And so we're going to go through a process where the county will review how it enters into contracts and those sorts of things. It's not really an issue of policy. It's an issue of the clerk and the county commission sitting down and making sure that these types of disputes do not happen again in the future.
The way that our county has been operating in the recent history on how we purchase things has been really contentious. If you are a member of the county staff, you feel attacked. If you are a member of the county commission, you feel like you're in the middle. And if you were the clerk, you feel like your job is unable to be done because you're not getting the support you need from the staff. So really, what we need to do is get back on the same page. The county actually has very good policies and procedures. They just have to be followed. We have the ability in this county to make very good decisions on behalf of the community, but we have to be on the same page. The staff, the county commission, and the clerk of courts have to have the same objective, and that is to do the best work for the county for the best price. And really, we need to get back to that. There are too many arguments within staff, within the commission, within administration right now about how to do things. We should just get back to reading our proper policies and follow them to the letter.
Mr. Saunders, did you have anything to follow up with from that? Okay, thank you. Next question. What can or should Collier County government do to encourage the construction of affordable housing for working families? Ms. Karim, would you like to start?
I would, thank you. This is an issue that we will need to decide on very quickly because this is something that we absolutely need. Affordable housing for the workforce is in short supply here in Collier County. If you go to a real estate agent and you ask them to pull up how many homes there are for sale under $200,000, there aren't very many. Working force families need to know that they can buy good properties at a good price so that they can raise their families right here in Collier County. It is unconscionable that we have teachers and nurses and firefighters that are driving from Lee County, Charlotte County, Hendry County to serve our community. The best way to do that is to incentivize the developers with optional incentives. Increase density, make sure that the developers understand the bonus that they're getting because they will be able to build more houses on the same plot of land if they can guarantee a price point that is affordable to the working class. If not, then they don't get those options. They don't get the impact fee rebates. They don't get the sliding scale on perhaps how much they pay to the county up front. So that's what we really need to work on.
Affordable housing has been one of the major issues that we've debated all summer long and into the early fall. Collier County has a real problem with affordable housing. There are literally thousands of Collier County employees that drive south from Lee County every morning to come to work because they can't afford to live in Collier County. We do need to do a couple things. There are several things that the County Commission can do to incentivize and encourage the development of affordable housing. One is to eliminate or reduce impact fees for what would be considered truly affordable housing. And when I talk about affordable housing, I'm talking about workforce housing. I'm not talking about low-income housing or subsidized federal housing. I'm talking about workforce housing for people that work here in Collier County. The second thing that the Collier County Commission can do is to provide zoning incentives by increasing density on those parcels where truly affordable housing is developed. You always hear that the major impediment to affordable housing is land cost. Well, the way you drive down the land cost is that you increase density. And so you can build smaller units, you can build nice housing, more clustered housing, more density, and still be able to satisfy the needs of good quality housing for our workforce.
Ms. Karim, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I have one more thing to add, and this is an important piece of the puzzle. This is taking advantage of federal grant dollars. There are housing programs available to us. If we follow the rules, if we implement them correctly, we are able to provide assistance through the federal government. These are tax dollars we've already paid, and they're coming back into Collier County. If we can take advantage of housing programs through grants, through federal grants, we can really do a lot for our workforce without having to ourselves in Collier County do too much. We can have them bear the burden as well.
Thank you. Mr. Saunders, anything further?
No.
Okay.
I want to ask a follow-up question to what your answers were just a moment ago on that question, and I want to focus in on the where. We've heard a lot of complaints from folks in East Naples that they're shouldering an unfair burden when it comes to the workforce and affordable housing. Do you see that to be true, or do you think that your particular district that you're running for, that you can take in more affordable housing? And Annisa, why don't you go ahead and tackle that one first?
Sure. So District 1, actually, East Naples, has a lot of subsidized housing, and I believe it's a different type of housing that we're talking about today. It is Section 8 housing that's going into District 1. So I think that's where the connotation of having unfair distribution of this type of housing is. We have the ability to provide workforce housing. Primarily, it will be in District 5, because that is where we will see most of our growth. But we can also provide workforce housing in the infill here in urbanized Naples. So we have undeveloped lots that we have in Naples. The infrastructure is available. The utilities are already under the roads. If we are able to very quickly and very simply reduce the impact fees for those undeveloped lots, we can provide workforce housing in urbanized Naples. We do not have to do it in clusters of workforce and non-workforce. We can mix those clusters with high-end houses and workforce housing, but we can do it all over the county, and I don't believe that workforce housing has been distributed unfairly.
You know, this is one of the issues where there's probably not a whole lot of daylight between my position and Annisa's position. I do not believe that the East Naples district, Commissioner Fiala's district, has been treated unfairly. There may be a significant amount of workforce housing that's gone up there, but I don't think anyone's been treated unfairly. I do believe that the most likely locations for workforce housing will be in District 5 and in District 3. There's a lot of vacant land that's affordable for this type of development. And so I think that the County Commission can show a lot of leadership in terms of dealing with this workforce housing issue, again, by providing zoning incentives, increased density, and providing some impact fee credits. The one thing the County Commission is going to have to do is make sure that this is truly affordable housing for our workforce. So I think that the County Commission, the new County Commission, will take leadership in making sure that this issue is resolved. It's something that's very important for our economic development. That's another issue that I'm sure we'll be talking about some this evening.
Ms. Karim, anything further? Okay. The next question. Did the County Commission make the correct decision last week when granting Arthrex permission to build a 122-foot tower on Creekside Drive and to reroute the street to accommodate their expansion plans? And if not, what concessions, if any, would you have been willing to grant to accommodate the business? Mr. Saunders, would you like to go first?
I believe the County Commission made the right decision in providing that approval for Arthrex. Arthrex is one of those gems for this community. Literally thousands of people work for Arthrex, and they're continuing to expand. It's one of those companies that we can be very, very proud of. And so I think that the County Commission and the county staff are taking appropriate actions to make sure that the communities in and around where Arthrex will be expanding are going to be protected. But this is the type of development that needs to be encouraged, and I think the County Commission did the right thing in approving that development.
I do not agree with the County Commission's decision on Arthrex. Arthrex has been a good player in Collier County, and I'm very glad they're here. But in this case, we are playing favorites for the big guys, and I don't believe that that is correct. It is the job of county government to protect all of its people and to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to thrive. When Arthrex asked for those waivers, it was directly against something the County Commission had decided previously. And that is totally unfair. I believe that we cannot go with the winds of change when it comes to providing better services for the big boys instead of everybody. We had a small business that parking was taken away from a small business the very same day that Arthrex was granted all of these benefits. So no, I don't believe that this was a fair decision. I do believe that the County Commission should have allowed the new County Commission to make the decision on behalf of the constituents of Collier County.
Mr. Saunders, anything? If I might then just follow up with a question on the same topic. Looking to the future beyond specifically the Arthrex matter, what approach should the county take toward offering incentives for businesses for economic development? Ms. Karim, would you like to go first on that one?
Economic development is something that we really have to look at very closely. We have to understand the role of government in economic development. If we are able to take care of the basics, economic development will happen. So if you are familiar with the company NCR, National Cash Register, NCR just moved its headquarters from Cincinnati to Gwinnett County, Georgia. And the reason is not because they were given this amazing tax incentive. The reason is because the school system in Gwinnett County is very, very good. If we provide the basics, now obviously the County Commission has very little to do with the school board, but it is an example. If we have the appropriate infrastructure, if we are planning our communities well, if we have affordable housing, if we have people to we have places for people to recreate, companies will do what is in the best interest of them and their employees and move to Collier County. Economic development is very important, but we already have natural capital. Our natural assets, our natural capital are hand in hand. If we take care of them, take care of the basic interests of the people, protect water resources, the economy will grow. It is growing, it will continue to grow. We don't have to play favorites.
Not too many years ago, there was a saying that quality of life means having a good paying job. We have a lot of youngsters growing up in this community. I have twin sons that one's graduated from college and one is getting ready to graduate from college. One of my sons was very fortunate. He got a good paying job here in Collier County. I'm not so certain that my other son will find the type of work that he's looking for. We live in a very competitive world, and if we want to attract companies like Arthrex to Collier County, then we're going to have to compete with Lee County, we're going to have to compete with the rest of Florida, we're going to have to compete with Texas and other states. And the way you compete is to provide the types of incentives that are important to businesses to move their headquarters or their operations to Collier County. And so the thing that the County Commission has to do is be very, very careful to make sure that when there are incentives provided, that they're provided to the right type of company that's going to provide the right types of jobs, and that there are assurances that those jobs that are to be created are actually created. So as long as the County Commission and county staff is very diligent in how they vet companies, I will support incentives, economic incentives, to bring the right types of companies to Collier County.
Ms. Karim, did you have a rebuttal?
I do. Thank you. So it sounds great to be able to handpick the businesses that are coming to the County Commission, into the county to vet them. The truth is that when we handpick, when we provide incentives to some businesses and not others, we are totally, we're not allowing the fair market to operate. We want the best businesses here in Collier County. If we make sure our roads are good, our water is clean, that we are able to traverse from one side of the county to the other, the businesses will come. If we make sure that we have a school system second to none, the businesses will come. If we are hand-picking businesses, we could totally overlook an innovative business that could be very, very successful. So, you know, to have a small group of people hand-pick certain businesses, to me, is totally unfair. It goes against what county government should be doing. We should be protecting all of the people, and in the meantime, the businesses will come. If we're doing our jobs correctly, the businesses will come.
Mr. Saunders, would you care to rebut that?
Yes, just real quickly. When I was in the state Senate, I served as a Senate representative to the Board of Directors of Enterprise Florida, a team of professionals that vet companies that are interested in moving to Florida. So we're not talking about 3 or 4 members of the Collier County Commission hand-picking individual businesses that they think are going to be the best for the community. We're talking about a professionally run operation, Enterprise Florida, and other business organizations that can help in that regard. So again, if the County Commission is diligent in the way they vet companies and they use the resources that are available, the state funds that are available, as well as the state resources, then we can pick the right companies to come to Collier County.
We've heard a couple of references here to the county's resources. I want to ask about the decision that the county commission made not to go to the rollback rate and to keep the same tax rate. And we'll go ahead and start with you first on with this one on Burt. If you had been on the commission, would you have reduced the tax rate, or would you have kept it where it is as the county commission did?
I would have reduced the tax rate. We've had a run-up in property values for the last 4 or 5 years. We are generating significant revenue for the county. Now, I understand that there are some shortfalls in terms of some transportation issues, but as long as the Collier County government is run efficiently, we can meet those needs with the resources that we have. When Collier County government benefits from the run-up in tax values, our taxpayers should also benefit from that. So I believe that the county commission should have rolled back the millage rate, take a look at how we can become more efficient and spend the tax dollars that we have. Our residents are stressed just as much as county government is stressed, so we should have shared that benefit with the taxpayers. We should have rolled the millage rate back. And just for those that may not understand exactly what that means is that the rolled back millage rate would be the rate that would generate the same amount of tax dollars, ad valorem tax dollars, in 2016, 2017 as in the prior year. So that it would have been a neutral thing in terms of ad valorem taxes for the county, but it would have been a benefit for our citizens.
This is a difficult decision. You know, this is really why you have to understand who your county commissioners are. County Commission has to make sure that they are providing the best services to all of the people in Collier County. And currently, like I said, Collier County is the 10th fastest growing county in the nation. We have to provide services and keep up with our population so we are able to provide the best services. When someone calls 911, there should be someone there at their door within minutes. I would not have rolled back the tax rate. I believe that we have too much catching up to do. I understand that there is a burden on the taxpayers. I believe that the millage should be rolled back in 2 years. And in 2 years, we can collect the amount of taxes that we can to benefit us. We have roads that we stopped building in the late 90s. We need to catch up on roads. If you have ever driven on Immokalee Road or Pine Ridge at rush hour, you know what I'm talking about. We have stormwater systems that aren't up to code. Not up to code, but they're not keeping up with sea level rise. We have to make investments now when interest rates are low so that we can provide for the future of this county.
I think my response is simply that that was a bit of a mixed answer. You're talking about interest rates being low. Well, then that's a good time to perhaps borrow money for some types of governmental infrastructure projects. But again, our taxpayers are stressed, our employees are stressed, and by giving them a little bit of a tax break would have been, I think, the right thing for the county commission to do. My job as a county commissioner is to keep taxes as low as possible on our citizens and to make sure that we expend those tax dollars in the most efficient way.
Ms. Karim, anything further on that topic? I just heard it mentioned, so we'll bring it up now. Does Collier County need some sort of tax or surcharge as a dedicated funding source for a comprehensive wastewater management plan? And if so, how should it be assessed? By a flat fee, by acreage, by property value? Ms. Karim?
I don't think we need a surcharge. We actually have the ability, if we don't roll back taxes, we have the ability to upgrade our stormwater system appropriately. Our stormwater system has to deal with sea level rise. It also has to deal with all of the new construction. As we have debris on the roads from these vehicles, we have all of that debris going into our stormwater system. We have hydrocarbons that are carrying through our stormwater system. So we don't need a surcharge, but we don't have to roll back taxes either. We can get it done with the taxes we have currently.
That may have been a little bit of a confusing question. When you're talking about wastewater, I'm
Actually,
assuming that you're...
stormwater, I'm sorry.
Okay, so wastewater deals with treated effluent from our wastewater treatment plants, and that's a commodity that the county sells and distributes on golf courses and on medians. In terms of stormwater, obviously we have some significant stormwater issues here in Collier County. We do have some improvements that need to be made. There are ways to deal with stormwater that, for example, there may be communities where you need to set up special taxing districts to help deal with some of the stormwater issues in a specific community. I do not believe, again, that taxing our entire community by not rolling back the millage rate was the right thing to do. I do believe we can deal with stormwater in terms of communities with special taxing districts and with the revenues that the county has.
If I can, I want to stick with a utility-related question here for one last question in this round. We've heard some complaints in the past about the utility that's serving the Golden Gate area in your district. Would you be in favor, and let's go ahead and start with Annisa on this one. Would you be in favor of the county trying to take over the FGUA utility?
I don't think the county needs to take over the FGUA utility. I think that there are things that the county can do to help the utility if the utility will accept the help. The county actually runs utilities very efficiently, but we don't need to take on something else. If we provide consultation, I will say, if we provide that to make sure that FGUA is able to keep up with the demands and listen to the concerns of the citizens, I think it can be done quite quickly without the county taking on that additional burden.
Absolutely, the county should take over that utility. And here's a couple of reasons why. If you take a look at the wastewater rates and the water rates for that utility system, they're the highest rate, some of the highest rates in the state of Florida. The water rates are about 3 times as high as what the water rates are in the city of Naples, just as an example. Most of the residents in that service area do not hook up to their water system because the water is just too expensive. If we're going to have county water and county wastewater services to the residences as well as the businesses in that service area, the only solution is for the county to take over that utility system. That system is a very, very profitable system for the FGUA. It has no leadership at all from Collier County. There's no members of the Collier County citizens or no county citizens on their board of directors. They're all from out of town. They're taking full advantage of what they're doing in the Golden Gate area, and that system should be taken over by the county. Annisa is just simply wrong on that one.
If we are allowed to, if we are able to provide the consultation to help FGUA be a better utility company for the constituents, that's what we need to do. We don't need to take over this additional burden. There is no guarantee that if the county takes it over, that the water rates will fall. There's no guarantee of that. I live in Golden Gate City, and I know that the residents aren't hooking up, not just because of the rate of water, but because we already have cheap water. We don't want to connect the pipes. It's not just the water rates, it's the cost of construction for those pipes, and that's why we're not doing it.
There is an absolute guarantee that rates will go down if that system is taken over by the county because the rates will simply be blended into the county-wide rates. That would result in all of the residences, all the businesses in Golden Gate Estate, in the Golden Gate area, being able to hook up to reliable city water and wastewater services. The FGUA has no incentive at all to do anything other than to maximize their profits on the backs of the citizens of District 3 in the Golden Gate City area. That's because they're from out of town. They have no leadership, as I said, from Collier County. Collier County has been aggressive in taking over these small utility systems, and this is one that desperately needs to be taken over by the county.
I have a question from the audience. Our water is being polluted by water flowing from Lake Okeechobee. Do you support the purchase of sugarland property south of the lake by the state, and what role, if any, should the county commission play? Mr. Saunders?
You know, that's a question that's very dear to my heart. When I was in the state Senate, I filed the legislation that resulted in the state-federal partnership, the $6 billion plumbing project to fix the Florida Everglades. I worked on that with then Governor Jeb Bush. Subsequent to that, I worked on several other pieces of legislation. The legislation called the Northern Everglades legislation to fix the Kissimmee River, which is a river that flows into Lake Okeechobee. So I do support 100% the acquisition of lands south of Lake Okeechobee for water storage. Now, that's not a panacea. That's not going to solve the problem. There's not enough land for storage of water south of Lake Okeechobee to store all of the water that can flow from the Kissimmee River or from other sources into Lake Okeechobee. The real key is to do that along with cleaning the water that goes into Lake Okeechobee, but also significantly important is the federal government fixing the dike that is there to protect the citizens south of Lake Okeechobee. But yes, I do support the acquisition of land for storage of water south of Lake Okeechobee.
Fixing the dike is something the federal government needs to do whether or not the water was polluted. So that's actually a separate issue. But allowing the water to flow south of Lake Okeechobee is a key component to making sure that we are able to rehydrate the southern Everglades appropriately. The plant communities are changing, our animal composition is changing, and so we have to do that, but when we release the water, we have to make sure that it is clean. So it has to be filtered. We have pollution coming into Lake Okeechobee still from the Kissimmee River. There are many, many septic systems that are leaking. So the pollution is coming in from the south. It is coming in from agriculture, back pumping into Lake Okeechobee. And quite frankly, as the water is released down the Caloosahatchee River, there are septic systems, residential septic systems along the Caloosahatchee River that are also leaking into the river. So the lake is not where all of the pollution is coming from, but it is a convergence of the pollution. So as a county commission, what we can do is simply support the efforts of our legislature and the county commission in Lee County. We have a Southwest Florida Regional Planning Commission that we can provide input to, but the watershed for Lake Okeechobee does not touch Collier County. The effluent doesn't come through Collier County except via the coast. Our watersheds are not connected to Lake Okeechobee. If we do release water, it would be. So that's where we have to make sure, that's where we protect ourselves, that if we are releasing water south of Lake Okeechobee, that it is filtered appropriately, so it's not contaminating the land, and that we are once again introducing fresh water, clean water into our watershed.
Mr. Saunders, anything further on that topic?
Here's another question from the audience, and thank you for these. What services do you think Collier County government should provide to senior citizens? Burt, Saunders, you want to tackle that first?
Well, that's a very interesting question. You could ask the same question about what services should be provided to any category of people. I think that the County Commission has to be very careful about getting into areas that are more or best left to the private sector and to the charitable community. In terms of services for seniors, the Collier County should continue to provide the type of services that are, for example, at the Golden Gate Senior Center. We should support those completely. We should try to make sure that our roadways are safe for our seniors that are driving on them. But when you get down to providing services for a particular segment of the community, you've got to be a little bit careful on how you structure that. We have a tremendous number of seniors in our community, and the good news is that we have a very charitable community providing a tremendous number of services for our seniors.
We are fortunate to have a very charitable community. We have so many nonprofits in Collier County that provide services to seniors, but if one of those nonprofits dissolves, we won't know what we're missing in terms of what our seniors need. We do know, however, that all of the assisted living facilities that are being constructed, the high-end assisted living facilities, they aren't going to meet the need in the future. But more urgently, more concerning is the seniors that have perhaps gone bankrupt because of dementia, that they have nowhere to live in season because they're living in their car because they can't afford to live in their homes. They rent their homes out to our seasonal visitors. It happens. I've spoken to people at the senior center, and this is the type of burden that they're seeing. We have the ability to do very simple things as county government to help our senior citizens. The Coalition for Senior Citizens actually did a study, FGCU, and they did a needs assessment for senior citizens, and they found out that something that we can do very quickly, very easily, is to provide the appropriate transportation. We have a sector of senior citizens that live in northeastern Collier County that don't have any transportation. And we're not talking about paratransit, just no transportation. As we grow, if we're adding bus lines, we need to prioritize adding bus lines to populations that need it. So if we're able to be aware of these studies and comprehend how the county government can afford better benefits to those seniors, we need to do it. The one thing we don't know is where the gaps are.
Sorry.
I would like to add one thing. During the campaign this summer, I spent a lot of time talking about how Collier County and the County Commission should be working very diligently to get a veterans nursing home here in Collier County. That would help with one segment of our elderly population. Governor Scott has indicated that creating state-supported, state-funded veterans nursing homes is a top priority for him. We have about 5 of those nursing homes that have already been created around the state. Governor Scott lives here in Naples. It should be a priority of the Collier County Commission, and one of the things I will do as a commissioner is make sure that we work diligently to get a veterans nursing home here in Collier County.
Thank you. Anything further?
Of course we need a veterans nursing home. That's part of what we need. We don't know what else we need because we don't know where the gaps are. We aren't able to go to our nonprofits and say, who aren't you supporting? We just aren't doing it. We're able to, we're just not doing it. That's something that county government needs to know. We need to know where the gaps are and how we might be able to fill them if we need to.
Thank you. For both candidates, should Collier County adopt a local ordinance to ban alternative oil extraction methods such as fracking? Ms. Karim, would you care to go first?
I do believe that Collier County should ban alternative oil extraction methods such as fracking. We have seen from other states and other communities the damage that fracking can do. Fracking destroys our roads. Fracking destroys our water supply. Fracking can cause earthquakes. We have one chance at this. We have one chance at this. We cannot unring that bell. If we contaminate our water supply, we can't go back. We can truck water in for a very high rate, but we can't go back. We can't get our tourism industry back. Our tourism industry is the backbone of Collier County. In Southwest Florida, the environment is the economy, and we know that. We know because people come for our beautiful beaches. They come for the Everglades. They don't come to see oil wells all across the western portion of the Everglades. We have a gem here. Fort Lauderdale is very similar to Collier County in terms of weather. They've overdeveloped. So is Miami. So is Palm Beach. We have the opportunity not to do that. We have the opportunity to protect our natural resources and protect our economy, and that's what we must do. And to do that, we have to ban fracking.
I don't have any issue with banning fracking in Collier County. I agree that the risks are too great for our water supply. I do believe that the only effective way to deal with this issue is through state legislation. There is a legal opinion that was entered into by the Lee County attorney about 1.5 years ago, indicating that counties in Florida do not have jurisdiction to ban or regulate fracking. The legal opinion basically says that counties are preempted from that. Now, we may agree or disagree with that legal opinion, but a simple ordinance banning fracking that's not enforceable doesn't get the job done. Again, I have no problem with an ordinance doing that. I do have some question as to whether or not it would be valid. The real solution is to work with our legislative delegation and the state legislature to pass legislation that requires the right type of studies and perhaps even bans fracking throughout Florida. But this has to be an issue that has to be dealt with by the Florida legislature, because I guarantee you that if Collier County passes an ordinance to ban fracking, there will be litigation from it. I'm not sure that ordinance would withstand a judicial challenge.
Rebuttal?
So I don't know what the legislative delegation has really done for Collier County lately. They introduced a bill basically saying that they wanted to remove home rule. So that's not really in Collier County's best interest. They introduced a bill that they wanted to allow fracking companies to keep their chemicals a trade secret. That's really not on behalf of Collier County. They lowered water quality standards. That's really not going to the benefit of Collier County. I don't see how our legislative delegation can do any worse for Collier County, quite frankly. We have to protect our home. It is our responsibility. There are other communities across Florida who have banned fracking. Palm Beach, Pinellas, Miami-Dade. They don't want fracking. They don't want the wastewater. We have to stand up and send a message to Tallahassee that this issue is too important. Our water supply is too important. Our economy is too important. Our environment is too important. And we stand with these other counties in banning fracking, and then we allow our county attorney that we pay to make the decision on whether that is the best interest of Collier County or not.
Again, I have no issue with banning fracking. I do have a significant question as to whether or not a ban by a county would be enforceable, and there will be litigation on that issue. There are many counties that have passed resolutions urging that there not be fracking. There are many cities that have done the same thing, and there are some cities that have passed legislation. I actually drafted and worked with the Conservancy of Southwest Florida to draft legislation that was approved by the Estero City Council to ban fracking within the village of Estero. So I understand the legal issue. Cities can ban fracking. Clearly, cities are not preempted because there's language in the statute that says that cities can regulate oil drilling. Counties are not listed as entities that can deal with the issue of oil drilling, and that's where the county attorney in Lee County has said fracking cannot be banned by a county. I believe it can be banned by a city, but that doesn't solve our problem. And Annisa, we have a new legislature. Every 2 years, we get new members of the legislature, both in the House and in the Senate. We have a new state senator. I think it would be prudent for the county commission to work with our state senator, our state House members, and other members of the legislature to try to get a ban on fracking at the state level, because that's the only way we're going to be sure that this problem is going to be solved.
Two-part question here. Burt, if you would start with this one, and I'm looking for the first part of this to be a yes or a no, and then the second part of the question. The question is, do you favor going back to the voters to reinstate the conservation Collier tax? And if your answer is yes, for how many years and how much in tax?
Yeah. I absolutely support that. As a matter of fact, I've campaigned on that issue all summer long. Collier County, in order to preserve and protect our groundwater supplies and the areas that are necessary for our animals as walkways, pathways for our panthers and that's other animals, we need to preserve more land in Collier County. And the only way we can do that, there's two ways we can do that. One is by reinstating Conservation Collier. It should be put to the voters, I believe, at least a 10-year period. In terms of the millage rate, I do not, quite frankly, recall what the millage rate was initially, but it should be the same millage rate as before. And that money should be used to acquire valuable habitat necessary for preservation of very valuable habitat throughout the eastern portion of Collier County. Now, in addition, we'll talk about this later on, I believe we need to expand our transfer development rights program, which will be another method of preserving valuable habitat and helping to reduce the population that's expected to come here to Collier County. So yes, we should reinstate that.
Yes, absolutely. We need to reinstate Conservation Collier. We have to keep the millage at $0.50 mil, and we have to make a couple of changes to the ordinance. When Conservation Collier was still actively acquiring land, they had some multi-parcel projects that they were trying to complete to protect the watersheds at Winchester Head and Horsepen Slough. We need to allow them or put specific language in the ordinance to do that. We also have to change the ordinance to make sure that more of the acquisition dollars are actually going into maintenance. Conservation Collier had 10% of their acquisition dollars, their tax revenue, going into maintenance of the land. We know it costs more to do that. We are seeing new invasive species in our natural areas every day. That's not an exaggeration. That is the absolute truth. We need more resources to combat them, and 10% just isn't enough. So 20% of the acquisition dollars should go into perpetual maintenance of these natural areas, and we should absolutely reinstate it for 10 years.
Mr. Saunders, do you have a rebuttal to that?
Not really a rebuttal, but just a commitment. I will commit that within, and we always talk about the first 100 days, within the first 100 days of being elected to the county commission, I will push to have this presented to the county commission, put together in a way that can ultimately be presented to the voters. I do believe that that's a very important component to protecting our environment and also managing our future growth.
Okay. Ms. Karim, final thought on that subject?
I think Burt and I are on the same page on this. I've already started drafting the language that I would like to propose.
That concludes our Q&A portion. We would like to go into closing statements, and we will start with Annisa.
Again, I'd like to thank the Naples Daily News for doing this forum. It is now up to the voters in Collier County. This is a watershed election for us. This will determine what our community looks like in the future. So you have to ask yourself who you want to represent you. Do you want a group of homogenous people, or do you want people with different perspectives? I have a Master of Science in Wildlife Ecology and Conservation. I am committed to protecting the environment because I know that that is the bedrock of our economy, that is the bedrock of our health, and that is the bedrock of our agriculture. We have to make Collier County like no other county in the United States, and we can do that because we have the amazing natural resources to do so. We have the ability because we are still young in terms of growth. We can direct our growth in an intelligent way so we don't look like Fort Lauderdale. We have the ability to make this the prime destination for people. We know that people are coming here, but we have so much more that we can do with agro-tourism that we haven't even started. This is really an exciting new stage for Collier County, and I would love to represent the people of District 3 in that new stage. Please go to my website, AnisaKarim.com, and find out more about me. Please vote for me on November 8th. Thank you so much.
I want to thank you again for being here this evening. I want to thank the Naples Daily News for putting on this very important forum. I really wish we had another half hour because I'd like to get into transfer of development rights and other programs that are very important for the future of this community. You can call me or you can go to my webpage, burtsaundersforcollier.com. We can talk about some of those plans that I have, and they're working papers on my webpage. Again, my reason for running is simply that I feel that I can make a contribution to Collier County and to the future of this county in dealing with growth, in dealing with protecting our environment. If you take a look at my history, you'll see that even during the 14 years that I was in the legislature, my primary focus was protecting Collier County's environment and the environment of the state of Florida, protecting our Everglades, cleaning up Lake Okeechobee, cleaning up the Caloosahatchee River, doing those types of things on the ground to protect and preserve our future by protecting our environment. I hope that I've earned your support this evening. I'm looking forward to getting back on the county commission and working very diligently to promote the benefit, the best interest of our community, to help manage growth, to help protect our environment. Again, thank you for being here this evening.
And that wraps up our 2016 Candidate Forum. Thank you for joining us, and remember that early voting is open and Election Day is November 8th. Thank you for joining us. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Penny Fisher, the interim executive editor of the Naples Daily News, and I will be your moderator for this evening. Welcome to our in-studio guest, our online viewers, our panelists, and of course our candidates. To kick off the forum, we'll give each candidate 2 minutes for an opening statement. During the Q&A, each person will have 1 minute to answer the question. Each candidate will have 30 seconds for a rebuttal, and the other candidate will have 30 seconds for a counter rebuttal. At the end of the program, each candidate gets 2 minutes for a closing statement. We are keeping time and fairness to everyone, and I will alert you if the answer is too long. Let's go over the rules before we get started. Rule number 1, no signs, t-shirts, or handout materials supporting any candidate or cause. Cell phones must be silenced. No pictures, videos may be taken during the forum. No speaking from the audience. No show of support for or against any participant. That includes clapping, cheering, whistling, or booing. Applause is appropriate upon the conclusion of the program. Now to introduce our panelists, we have editorial editor Alan Bartlett with the Naples Daily News. We have Brent Batten, who is a columnist for the Naples Daily News. And in our final forum for the evening, we are featuring the Collier County Commission District 5 race. Please say hello to Bill McDaniel and Tamara Paquette. Paquette, is that right? Paquette. Paquette. We're going to go ahead and get started with opening statements. Those are 2 minutes long, and we're going to start with you.
Good evening. My name is Tamara Paquette. Oh, thank you. Microphone. This is better. My name is Tamara Paquette, and I am happy to be running for Collier County Commission in District 5. I'm very proud to be a longtime resident of Collier County. I moved here in 1978 from an 18-acre farm, and boy, do I know hard work. And when you move to Collier County and you come to the land of sunshine, you bring all your joy with you. And Collier County is my home, it's my nest, and I'm here to protect it. I'm a political scientist. I studied public administration. I have actually interned at the Board of County Commissioners when I was getting my degree in political science, and I served my country at the United Nations in New York City during the General Assembly. I come from a family that we believe very strongly in public service, and I was very fortunate back in March to be able to retire early, and now I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life to serving the people who have served me so well. If you are at home, you can go to www.tamaraforddistrict5.com to see my website. And if you're here in the audience, thank you very much for giving of your time to be here. This means a lot that you want to take part in county government. So, thank you.
If you don't mind moving your foot so I can see the clock, that'll help. That'll help me not get corrected for running over. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bill McDaniel, and I plan on serving as your next Collier County Commissioner for District 5. Folks, my message is pretty simple. It hasn't changed. Less is more. And by that I mean less government, less bureaucracy, more accountability, and more jobs. I'd like to talk about the jobs first. I believe that the key to economic sustainability for all of Collier County is employment. So I propose that we reduce the amount of time that our employers have to spend in the permitting process. We reduce the amount of expenses associated with those permits, and we reduce the paperwork and the trips that they have to make to our government centers. Governments don't create jobs, ladies and gentlemen. Free markets create jobs. Governments need to be gotten out of the way. Now, as far as accountability goes, I believe that if our Board of County Commissioners were to regularly demand transparency, we can force accountability. And with accountability, we can get to the facts. Now, we are a public entity. There will always be politics, and there will always be emotion. And frankly, far too regularly, politics and emotion guide our decision makers. I would prefer that we make our decisions based upon facts. Now, folks, I've been an advocate for our community for decades, way before this politic thing came along. I am now and have been on the board of directors of Goodwill of Southwest Florida for 15 years. I am now the president of and one of the founders of the Corkscrew Island Neighborhood Association. I've served on multiple advisory committees to our board. 3.5 years ago, I received the gubernatorial appointment to the Collier County Housing Authority, and until 2 months ago, I served as chairman of the board of the Collier County Housing Authority. So please, when you have a moment, visit my website, votebillmcdaniel.com, or my Facebook page. Both my resume and my credentials are there, and I promise you, if you read all that, it will assist you with any issues you may have had with insomnia.
All right, candidates, the first question this evening, again, thank you for accommodating us this evening. I know we had to reschedule this event from prior. What can or should Collier County government do to encourage the construction of housing affordable for working families? Ms. Paquette, would you care to go first?
I would be happy to. I started this race back in March, and that was the first topic that we talked about at the forum out at the IFAS Center. And your reporter came right up to me and was all excited to hear what Tamara had to say when it came to sliding scale impact fees. My family moved here in the 70s, and my dad worked in construction. And when you had a piece of land and you wanted to build on it, you were building based on a sliding scale of impact fees. Well, over the years, impact fees have gone to a set level, minimum $23,000. So getting even into building a house is so often cost prohibitive. So when I get a trouble or a problem before me, the first thing I do is try to get my head around it, find all the smart people, get their input, went down to the Affordable Housing Board, and I sat with all of the staff and I said, okay, what's our solution? And that is what they came up with, and that's what I'm going to champion, because you always have to take the best practices and then implement them. But our county government hasn't done that yet, and when I'm commissioner for District 5, we're going to do it.
Would you ask the question again?
What can or should Collier County government do to encourage the construction of housing affordable to working families?
And Brent, that's an interesting question, and I think we need to find out some definitions as to what, in fact, affordability is, what the definition of affordability is, and who we're looking to actually service. We have an issue in Collier County that transpired 10 years ago, and one of the things that I don't want to do is continue to have the same conversations about deficiencies in our government operations 10 years from now. We have a deficiency, a hole in our housing processes that supports income-restricted individuals, professionals, first responders, firemen, teachers, and the like. They left in 2006 because the only mechanism that was in fact allowed for or utilized by our governing group was impact fees. They increased them, they doubled them, they increased them again, and caused economic infeasibility to a point where people that were coming here that did in fact secure jobs had to live in another portion or in an entirely different county. So I would rather we explore how we're going, or what type of housing we're going to look to address first.
Ms. Paquette, would you care to respond another 30 seconds or rebut what he had to say?
Well, I'm a politician now, so I guess I'm supposed to talk all the time.
If you'd like. You're
A
under
smart
no obligation.
politician knows when to shut up. But I love the fact that we're talking about this, because 16,000 people commute from all the other counties around us, and they take $480 million worth of their wages away from Collier County. So affordable housing is what we need to get businesses energized and excited to come here, because without it, their workers have no place to live.
Bill, final word on the subject.
If I may, and this goes back around to the definition side of things. As of last Thursday, there are 818 single-family homes, residences, both single-family and multifamily, under $250,000 for sale in Collier County. As of last Thursday, there were 4,336 homes sold at or below $250,000. So what's the definition that we're actually looking for? What's the marketplace that we're actually looking to assist with? So that's where I say, let's not have the same conversations that we had 10 years from now that we're having now.
Here's a sort of election procedural question. In Lee County, the county commissioners must run from the district where they live, but everybody in the county gets to vote. In the Collier County School Board races, the candidates run from the district where they live, but everybody gets to vote. In Collier County, the only folks that are going to vote for you are from your district, not everybody in the county. Would you favor changing the election procedure in Collier County for the commission so that everybody can vote? Let's go ahead and start with you, Bill.
I would favor having a discussion about it, but there are a couple of thoughts that I would like to add to that, Alan. They do the census every 10 years for a reason, because there is a specific change in the demographic on a 10-year basis. I would like to, before we go to a countywide election with commissioners from individual districts, and I'm certainly not opposed to it if that's in fact what the electorate wants to do, there is a concern there that the areas of the coastal area would be electing people and not necessarily having good representation or as much good representation for the inland portion of the community. I would actually like to have a discussion about how we actually designate the districts. How about if we run them east and west, so that a commissioner is in fact representing a cross-section of our community? Because we all know that the folks in the urbanized area and the coastal area have different interests necessarily than those in the internal and more rural area.
Nope, don't change the law. Don't change it, and I'll tell you why. When I go around District 5, and I like pictures. Here's Collier County. Here's how large the district is. It's very diverse. It's 2,503 square miles. And you have Immokalee, Chokoloskee, Everglades City, Ochopee, and then all of Golden Gate Estates. These people, their needs are diverse. It's not like the coastal communities. And the person who's from District 5 has to know that area by heart and has to be in the community and has to speak for the issues that affect the everyday lives of the people in District 5. So please, if you're from District 5, I love the idea of my people voting for me. And the folks who are running for office in other districts, let their people who know their area vote for them. And they're gonna, I trust people. I trust the voters. I know that they're gonna choose the right person.
No rebuttal, just a follow-up, if I may. And I say this to folks regularly. If the electorate wants to have a discussion about how we select our county commissioners, I'm all in. What I would like to say, and I say this to people all of the time, when I am elected as your county commissioner, I am going to be elected by the folks that live in District 5, but I'll be known as Bill McDaniel, Collier County Commissioner. I represent everybody. I vote on everything that goes on within our community. It's my responsibility to know what is going on within our community.
You opened yourself up for that one. Bill McDaniel's been running for District 3 for 9 years, and he actually started running again for this little tiny section of District 3 back in May of 2015. He only decided to be a member of District 5, just a few months ago, when Mr. Burt Saunders got in the race, and it got a little too hot and heavy because Bill McDaniel had raised $13,000 in about 8 months, and Burt Saunders in 3 months raised $18,000. So when the going got tough, Bill McDaniel skipped to District 5 and left his people behind that he had promised to serve and promised to represent. So I'm actually the candidate that's a longtime resident of District 5, and Bill McDaniel's new to the game.
Candidates, would you support the incorporation of Immokalee into a city?
To those lies?
Actually, the way the rebuttal worked out, it didn't work out. There would be closing. You have a closing statement later. Would you support the incorporation of Immokalee into a city? Ms. Paquette, would you go first?
Sure. One of the things that happens to Immokalee is so often decisions are made for them, and they want to be respected. They want to be listened to, and what's been going on for so many years is that the people in Immokalee, they are basically the last person on the list to get services, and it's a shame. And for the first time in history, there's actually somebody who is representing all of the community. Yo soy el paquete completo. Nuestra comunidad tiene una persona que puede representar todo. And I really feel that Immokalee's time is now. We don't need people making decisions for Immokalee that are from the coastal communities. And if the people of Immokalee decide that they want to incorporate, let's encourage that, but we have to make sure that the tax base is there so that we don't unduly burden the working people of that community.
I would certainly support the efforts of the residents of Immokalee if they do wish to explore the incorporation of their town in that area. There has been studies done back in 08 and 09, and there isn't a large enough tax base in the Immokalee overlay area to support incorporation. I would rather focus our energies on providing for infrastructure to that community. You have heard me say regularly in the campaign as we're coming through here that I intend to turn Immokalee into the economic epicenter of Collier County. And it's not about picking winners and losers, it's about supplying infrastructure to the community. The expansion of State Road 29 South has already been designated as the gateway to the world. The expansion in 4-lane of 29 North between Immokalee and LaBelle, interconnection with 82 and State Road 80 will provide us access for getting goods and services out of Immokalee. The expansion of the airport is another methodology as well. That's what I would prefer that we work on. But if the residents want to, I'll certainly work with them.
Just a red flag. I want everybody to think again about what Mr. McDaniel said. When you're talking about making a place an economic epicenter, that means widening all these roads. That means eminent domain. That means taking the front of people's properties. Just keep in mind that you've got a choice here on a commissioner that is dedicated to not allowing government to take people's lands to widen roads unless it's absolutely necessary, and someone who wants to charge forward and make sure that his agenda and the special interests that support him gets moved forward.
Bill, final word? No, you are, actually.
Yeah.
First off, there is not a necessity for eminent domain. I am personally very much against eminent domain. Second of all, the representations of my personal interest, the folks that support Bill McDaniel in his campaign, know what I in fact care about. They know that I'm about transparency. They know that I'm about accountability. They know that infrastructure is the key to success. What do we have in Collier County to provide the manufacturing industry? In natural resources, very little, but we do have people. If we enhance the education of the folks that we have here, provide a methodology to move goods and services, raw materials in, finished goods and services out, either by road or by air, all of the community wins.
Let's go ahead and Tamara, if you would go ahead and tackle this one first. We've heard a couple of things during the campaign. The Immokalee Airport should be an economic hub on the east side of the county. We also know that not far from there we've got some prime panther habitat. Can you talk about exactly during your 4-year term what you think ought to happen at the Immokalee Airport in terms of its future development?
The candidate who I respect tremendously, Randy Cash, he ran in the primary, and I learned a lot from that man. I respect him tremendously, and he had some ideas about needing more hangars and more ramps, because this was his specialty. And he was all for making that airport more user-friendly. But we have to remember, if we're going to do these kinds of things, the cost is very, very high. So we've got the Promise Zone coming up, and we have this potential money coming in. So if we can partner with building that airport up, but at the same time, not creating, let's just say, like the Southwest Florida Regional Airport, we do not want to disrupt the environment around it to the point where you've got planes coming in all day and all night. I mean, that would be extremely disruptive.
I'm all for the expansion of the Immokalee Airport. I've actually put forth very specific ideas. I want the airspace to be controlled. I want the taxiways and runways to be redone. I would like to see a FedEx hub brought into Immokalee to support Arthrex the single largest user of FedEx on the eastern seaboard. Again, I believe that would provide for employment for the residents of Immokalee as well. There are, by having a controlled airspace and a passenger facility, we can then partner with the Southwest Florida Regional Airport and the Naples Airport and move some of the air traffic off of those two urban airports. So I would very much be in support of it. It is going to be expensive, and I believe the Promise Zone is going to be the answer for us to be able to facilitate those funds to do that expansion.
You have anything further to say on the subject? Okay. Candidates, should Collier County lobby the state and federal governments for an additional interchange on I-75? And if so, where should that interchange be located? Mr. McDaniel, why don't you lead off?
I believe for health, safety, and welfare reasons, an additional interchange on I-75 makes sense. It makes sense to me. It makes sense for it to be located where Everglades Boulevard facilities are already in place. I believe with little expense to our community and or the federal government, that interchange facility that's there, the overpass that's there that goes down into the Picayune, can be modified and utilized for an interchange on I-75 at little expense to the taxpaying base. Now, does it need to be moved further east? That's going to be an inordinately expensive process. There are environmental concerns, but I believe that health, safety, and welfare is got to be paramount for our county. One hurricane, one fire, and those folks that are out there off of Wilson Boulevard and DeSoto Boulevard don't have access to be able to get to town. And I think that should be the primary requisite for us to be exploring that area as the interchange.
Well, as the real resident of District 5, that's a misnomer because there's a gate there. If you actually have to get out at the end of Everglades Boulevard, you open the gate. So creating an exchange, that's very interesting because I've been down there, and if there is a problem, you open the gate and people can get out. So regarding whether it should be an exchange or not, I have talked to the people that live up and down Everglades Boulevard and along DeSoto. They're concerned that if we do turn Immokalee into the economic epicenter, or we try to develop all of that land out there and turn it into Fort Lauderdale, they're going to be eminent domaining and turning all of those major corridors into highways. Like, I live off of Golden Gate Boulevard, and it was just this cute little 2-lane road, and now it's a highway right in front of my house. So my neighbors have concerns, and they should.
Mr. McDaniel, anything on that subject?
For the record, I am a resident of District 5. I live in Corkscrew Sanctuary Swamp. I live in paradise, by the way. I've owned that property for in excess of 20 years, and not quite 20 years, 17 years. Health, safety, and welfare is paramount for our community, and there is a specific need in eastern Collier County for additional access points. That doesn't have to be opened up into a complete interchange. It can be opened up for health, safety, and welfare issues, for access for folks that want to get to town, utilize I-75, and those that want to come home and utilize Everglades Boulevard. By no means are we talking about eminent domain and 4-laning of Everglades Boulevard. I just want to provide for access for the folks for health, safety, and welfare issues to get them out in the event of an emergency. And I know I'm over my 30 seconds.
Thanks.
Mr. Paquette, anything final word on that subject?
Bill McDaniel is correct. The reason why he's been running for this office for 9 years is because he does have land out there of critical concern that he wants to have a say in how that land is used. And for me, I personally think that disqualifies you, because if you have an economic incentive of having a seat on the council, that gives me a tremendous amount of pause, and it's enough to make you want to run for office and to stop him.
We're going to go ahead and move into the round with some questions from the audience, and thank you all for putting those in. Bill, if you want to start out with this question, please. Politics has been defined as the allocation of scarce resources. How would you set priorities in building the county's budget? Politics has been defined as the allocation of scarce resources. How would you set priorities in building the county budget?
County budget?
Yeah.
Well, first off, and that was a question in the prior debate, they talked about the ad valorem tax rate. And I've had meetings with our staff, both with the county manager and Nick Castellanguida and Mark Isaacson, and I've shared with them that I'm not interested in seeing any new taxes come to us or additional fees, utility fees, or anything along those lines until we have effectuated how our government systems are operating. One of the reasons why I'm running for county commissioner is I want our government to function irrespective of the dynamics that we know that are always going to come. The economy, it comes and it goes. The rain, it comes and it goes. I speak to our good Lord every day, sometimes more than once, and I've yet to get him to conform to my request for rain, no rain. I want our governments to function knowing that these dynamics are out there, and if we put proactive procedures in place, our government can in fact function with the inevitable dynamics that we know are going to come at us.
I think it's really important to remember where our revenue streams come from. And there's a tremendous amount of farming that goes on around Immokalee. And I heard from our current commissioner, Tim Nance, he said it was something to the tune of $800 billion of interest in that area, in the Tri-County area. Now, if we are to go along with Mr. McDaniel's plan of taking all that farmland and then turning it into developments, like planned unit developments, lots more gated communities, as a real estate broker, he might profit from selling those properties, but we're going to lose that revenue, and it's going to turn into ad valorem, which our tax base is going to plummet. We need our farming, we need our farmers, and we certainly don't want to put an entire workforce of farmers out of work in Immokalee. So let's make sure that if we're going to move forward with progress, that we don't do a lot of backsliding.
Any further thoughts on that, Bill?
Certainly. I spent 2 years of my life on the Rural Land Stewardship Overlay Committee, made a stack of recommendations, wordsmith level recommendations to that already award-winning land use plan. A portion of that was preservation and protection of in perpetuity of in excess of 40,000 acres of agricultural lands in eastern Collier County, predominantly surrounding the Immokalee area. And it also provided for value for the landowners that were setting aside those lands in a credit system, that those credits could be transferred to another portion of the community that was less environmentally sensitive and had less of a negative impact economically.
Final word, Ms. Paquette? Okay, thank you. Dovetailing perhaps with that topic, do you support the application by landowners in eastern Collier County to obtain a habitat conservation plan and an incidental take permit from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service? Ms. Paquette?
No, I am so glad we're bringing this up. I actually spoke at the IFAS Center, adamantly opposing a 50-year incidental take. We do not want a 50-year get-out-of-jail card free for anyone. Incidental take, what does that imply? That means if you are going to wipe out our endangered species, it's okay, because that's in the name of progress. And I'm an environmentalist. I care very deeply about our environment, and if you think about it, for every $1 that we spend on our state parks in the state of Florida, we get a $7 return. So if we kill off the caracara because somebody wants to build a planned unit development, or destroy primary panther habitat where they breed and they thrive and they feed, what good have we done? We've turned this coast into the East Coast, and that's a failure.
I would propose and I've had discussions with our staff about the creation of an HCP for our entire county. When you're doing an HCP, it allows for the aggregation of environmentally sensitive lands in and around your entire county that ultimately are already pre-approved by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection and the Army Corps of Engineers, and allows for us, as we are expanding, as we are building our road systems, as the growth inevitably comes to our community, it allows us to better manage and protect the habitat and also reduce the expenses associated with that. A huge portion of the expense that comes to our community comes from mitigation and offsets for environmental concerns that are necessary when a road expansion does in fact occur, and it's going to happen. HCP for the entire county makes a lot of sense to me. Now, the incidental taking portion of it, I'm not in favor of that.
Ms. Paquette, for the word, yes.
The idea that all this growth is inevitable is a misnomer. I know there are a lot of people that want this growth to happen, but it doesn't actually have to happen. And when you're thinking about the lands, like rural lands west, don't let anybody tell you it's a done deal, because we still have to do a monetary, wildlife, and a hydrological impact study and a road network appraisal. These are things that haven't been done. And there's already a study being done right now that Bill McDaniel and his constituents, they want to fast track and get that Rural Lands West built before the study even comes out to reveal whether or not this is going to have serious environmental impacts. And my goal as your next county commissioner in District 5, I'm going to slow it down until the science comes back and we can be sure that we do not destroy paradise to put up another gated community.
Bill, and final word, final thoughts?
There's no fast tracking that's going on. There's been an inordinate amount of time, an inordinate amount of public vetting that has gone into the Rural Land Stewardship Overlay Plan. In excess of, there are billions of dollars that have been protected from an environmental perspective standpoint by the allowing of the transfer, the creation of these credits from these environmentally sensitive areas and redirecting them to areas of less sensitivity, higher infrastructure already in place to support the growth and development. I'm only allowed 30 seconds, correct?
Can we still play with this thing, Bobo?
No, we're done.
Got a lot of ground we want to cover here. Focusing in on District 5, and Tammy, if you go ahead and answer this one first. My question is, do you feel in District 5 that the county has a good enough working relationship with the minority communities? And if not, what should be done to improve it?
You're looking at the improvement. Improvement is through people. Improvement is through relationships. It doesn't have a good working community, working relationship with the minority communities because, we have not had any diversity whatsoever in our representation. It's been, oh gosh, what's that naughty term? A good old boy network? I'm not supposed to use that term, but boy, that's what comes to mind. And the time has come for change because there's a reason there is such a low voter turnout in Las Afueras, because they don't feel like they're being listened to and they don't feel like they're being represented. So when I go out and I spend time in Immokalee and I go to all the events and all the festivals and I go to people's houses and I just sit there and I listen with my pad of paper and I write down all the things that matter to them, for the first time in history, someone has actually taken the time to go door to door and speak with working people and try to represent what they care about. And I hope I get enough time at the end because I've got a whole list of the things that Immokalee cares about and Everglades City cares about and Golden Gate Estates cares about, because what's been happening is the coastal communities have been making all the decisions and they haven't even paid the slightest bit of attention to the working people, because if you think about it, and I'm starting to talk really fast because I'm so passionate about this.
And you're running out of time.
And I'm running out of time. Okay, I'll do it later. I don't want to get yelled at.
What do the communities of ethnicity want that any other community doesn't necessarily want? The Haitian community, the African American community, the Latin community. They want a job, they want their families to be safe, and they want the opportunity to prosper. And if we as government provide for the employment scenario, the safe communities for their families and for their homes, I don't believe that any particular ethnic group wants something special other than any other one that's out there. So I believe as government, that's our job. Our job is to provide an opportunity for industry to come here, education for the folks that in fact live within our community to elevate themselves and increase their income.
You could have 30 seconds to continue if you would.
I don't like to disagree with people. I like to get along. I'm all about harmony. But Bill McDaniel's wrong. That's not true. The minority communities want opportunities and representation. You can't cookie cutter. Every group is different, and every group needs a voice. And when you have the same, homogenous group making all the choices, we need a heterogeneous group. We need a widespread. We need different faces, and we need different people. And we need more female representation in my district because that's what's been sorely lacking.
Bill, final thoughts on that subject before we move on? No? Candidates, what issues have you identified in your district that are not being properly addressed by county government? What solutions can you offer, and how would you rally support among your fellow commissioners? Bill, I believe you go first.
Well, as I said earlier on, one of the issues that I believe our community hasn't been doing, our government systems at large are reactive. They're knee-jerk. I remember seated Commissioner Donna Fiella telling the folks 5-6 years ago when the Golden Gate Estates Master Plan was up for review. Oh, the property values are low. We don't have the money. We're going to have to stall the 10-year review of the Golden Gate Estates Master Plan. Here we are now, just starting it next year. Actually, this year we're in the neighborhood information meeting cycle right now. 6 years past the 10-year review. And as I spoke earlier, there's a reason, folks, that they do census on a 10-year basis. There is a change, excuse me, there is a change in the demographic that needs to be addressed. So managing the growth, I believe, is as much as anything the most important thing that we need to do. The growth needs to be succinct. It needs to be incentivized to be as close to the already existing infrastructure that we have in order to protect the very low ad valorem tax rate that we all have and experience here in Collier County.
Do you notice how he didn't answer the question? Because he's not from District 5, he doesn't have a clue. But let me tell you, because I'm from District 5. Golden Gate Estates, they want a moratorium on fracking and all fracking type drilling. They want a regional park because that's what they're desperate for. They want more mass transportation services. They want an elder care center. They want smart growth, and they want an ATV park. Bill McDaniel is not going to be providing an ATV park because he already has an ATV park in Hendry County, so he's not going to push for something that the people want because it's a conflict of interest for his own economic viability. Everglades City wants the Barren River dredge. They want the roads resurfaced with an eye to sea level rise. They want that bridge repaired, and they want a four-way stop at 29 and US 41. I'm looking at the clock. And Immokalee wants, they've got an affordable housing crisis, and they're desperate for it. They want their hospital. Why is it that if a pregnant woman is pregnant in the middle of the night, you have to drive all the way for 27 miles to have a baby? They want bathrooms in their parks, and they want benches. They want drainage to their roads. Women are walking their children to school with a baby on a hip and then one in tow, and they're riding in the middle because the roads don't drain. It's a danger. We had a little boy get killed recently.
Time.
And I got so much.
To this point, we've tried to give questions to the candidates for both of them to equally answer, but we've got a couple of questions that have come along here that I think need to be asked, and there's one for each of you, and you know what's coming based on that. And so here's the question for you, Bill. Earlier in your opening statement, you touted your experience with the Collier County Housing Authority, but earlier this year it was cited for improperly using federal money. Would you please address what your role was in overseeing that organization and why it misused federal money?
Sure. And it wasn't earlier this year, it was last year in May. There was to be exact, my role was, I was until 2 months ago the chairman of the board of the Collier County Housing Authority. We were informed last March, that our executive director that had been an employee for close to 10 years was misappropriating funds. There was no theft, because we did in fact hire a forensic auditor, and we determined that there was about $1.7 million of money that was granted to the Housing Authority for subsidized housing that was spent in other programs outside of the affordable housing. We dismissed the executive director. We won the unemployment case. We won the unemployment appeal. We went through the interview process, hired a new executive director. I entered into the $11 million rehab currently going on at Farm Workers Village right now, this past December, and then settled the litigation between the prior executive director. Of course, she sued because she thought she was wrongfully discharged. And we settled that litigation for $100,000, including her fee, our legal fees, and her legal fees, her fee, our legal fees, and her legal fees. Does that answer your question? That was a minute and 8 seconds.
And the individual question for you, Tamara. This is somebody who's been looking for a remodeling contractor, and they came across a review of your company. They said they've read several negative comments regarding projects of your company that were months behind schedule, and that there had been very little communication from the company to the homeowner. Can you address that?
I haven't seen those, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Candidates, did the Collier County Commission make the right decision last week when it allowed Arthrex to build a 125-foot tower and to reroute Creekside Drive here close to where we're sitting right now in order to allow the Arthrex expansion? Tamara, would you go first?
I want to be very clear about one thing. Preserve land is not placeholder land for development. Preserve land is not placeholder land for development. And that environmentally sensitive area that got used by Arthrex, I'm very concerned that this is a trend. And it's been going on for years. And I believe as county commissioner in District 5, we need to stop those kinds of things from happening. Before you start, when you take those parcels of land and you're setting them aside, it's supposed to be in perpetuity, not till the next guy comes along and he wants to put a parking lot down.
I did hear that there may have been some issues with some of the design work in advance, some representation to our staff, but I do have faith that our board made a good decision the other day when they supported Arthrex to expand their facilities. Almost 600 high-paying jobs come into our community, and I also know that when that expansion comes from an administrative standpoint, it's going to assist the folks, those of us that live in District 5, with additional employment opportunities as well.
Do you have anything further on that topic, Tamara?
We've seen projections that there's going to be another 400 to 500,000 residents moving to eastern Collier County, east of 951. And Bill, if you could start with this one. During this 4-year term, what needs to be done to look into the future if there's 400 to 500,000 people coming east of 951?
Well, and Alan, that's a very good question. Our GMP, our Growth Management Plan, currently uses a model that's generated by the state. It's called the Bieber numbers, and it's a straight line estimation of the population growth that's inevitably going to come to our community. And it's at best not very accurate. There are other tools that can be utilized that can better allow us to manage this inevitable growth. And my opponents mentioned a couple of times about the inevitability of growth, and I would like to share with you that the care and protection of real property rights is first and foremost with me, and it's for everybody that lives here in Collier County. If we don't plan for this growth, now that 300,000 to 400,000 people, Alan, sounds like an enormous amount of people, because we're effectively right now 350,000 in our community as we sit. It will be over another 40 to 50 years. It is necessary that we plan for this growth and development, allow for it to be succinct, and incentivize it to be started in the western portion of our community where we already have infrastructure in place.
The fact that the word inevitable growth, that's a misnomer. it doesn't have to come the way the way the prospectus is. And I know Bill McDaniel, because he's a real estate broker, wants all this growth because he's going to make a lot of money out there. But I, as an environmentalist, who's very, very concerned about putting planned unit developments on primary panther habitat, that scares me. But the other thing that worries me is all of the water for the coastal communities comes from exactly where they want to do the building. So if they decide to bring in 300,000 more people, that means everybody along the coast is going to need a desalination plant, because you can't just invent water. It's got to come from somewhere. So do you want to build it? Do you want the coastal communities? You got to ask yourself, do you want to start paying an extraordinary amount of money for your water? Do you want to incur the expense of a desalination plant? Just ask Cape Coral. That's where they are right now, and those filters are expensive. So don't say inevitable. As leaders, we can decide what we're going to do with that land. And property rights, do I have 1 minute or two? Okay, thank you.
Bill, anything further on that topic?
I would. Our GMP, as I spoke a moment ago, the growth management plan totals us out at 950 some odd thousand people. That's where we build out at. And if the metrics is utilized to get there at approximately 2.4 people per home, and I don't know how they get to 4.4. That's rather interesting. But end of the day, 2.4 people per home reduces back to a already vested real property right. And it is imperative that we protect those real property rights and incentivize their relocation out of our more environmentally sensitive areas and not overtax our tax base.
Final thoughts, 30 seconds.
One piece of property is not the same as another. You can't just transfer property rights. And everybody who owns a piece of property, like myself, you can't do anything on your property that's going to adversely affect the life and the domestic tranquility of everybody else around you. Anybody who's ever had their radio too loud and had their neighbor come over and say, could you turn your music down? If you're going to be building lots and lots of housing on top of your property, and you're going to turn all the roads into highways in front of everybody else who's already been there, we as a community have to decide what kind of growth we want. Just because you own property doesn't mean you get to do whatever you want with it.
That concludes our Q&A portion. We will go into closing statements. Each candidate has 2 minutes, and we will start with Burt. Yes. He's over there. Oh, sorry. Bill. I'm confused in which one I'm in. She said. Burt, are you coming? Bill.
Wait a minute, and then we'd have to give Annisa time.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Bill, sorry.
Okay. and I promise I won't take 2 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, I have lived here for 34 years. I've raised 2 beautiful children, my daughter Kelly and my son William. They both have attended public schools here in our community. And by the way, my daughter is my campaign manager. Folks, I know how blessed we are to live here in our community right now. I also know how blessed our future can be if we make the right choices and elect the right leaders. I'm seeking election as your next county commissioner for District 5 because I believe I am one of those right leaders. I know that if you support my platform for more jobs and more transparency, the brightest days of Collier County are yet to come. Thank you very much.
I got in the race back in March because I've been saying for years that we need more women in politics. When only 19% of our elected representatives are women, finally I looked in the mirror and said, Tamara, you got to stop putting this on the back burner. It's your turn to serve. So I looked around and I decided, all right, where's the biggest fire? Because I'm a fixer. I'm a problem solver. And the first thing I saw was District 5. And I've lived in Golden Gate Estates for many, many years. And when I noticed that Bill McDaniel had just skipped from District 3 after spending 9 years promising those people to put his best interests first, when the going got tough, Bill McDaniel abandoned his people, took their contribution money, and started to pretend that he was in District 5. When Tim Nance dropped out of the race. And I feel very strongly that District 5 people should represent District 5 people. And I represent the working people of District 5. If you look at my donations sheet, it's all $20 bills and $50 bills because that's a half a week's gas wages. Bill McDaniel, $500 and $1,000 checks. He's bought and paid for by the special interests. I represent the working people of District 5 and everybody. Yo soy Tamara Paquette, el paquete completo. And if you want to go to Tamara Paquette, tamaraforddistrict5.com, please look at my website and you will see that I am the daughter of Collier County.
That wraps up our 2016 candidate forum. Thank you so much for